Now that we're back, I won't go through the intro again, but what I will say is super excited to be having the Kickstarter next week. I've been interacting with some people on Discord. We did a Discord live chat last week, and then offering this as kind of a way to just to connect with all of you, whether you're backers of the previous Kickstarter or plan to back the new one, maybe just curious about what's going on. But I wanted to give you a bit of a preview of what's going to be in the Kickstarter and also answer questions. This is intended to be an Ask Me Anything. So if you have any questions about what's going on or design issues or anything like that, please let me know. Otherwise, I will just talk. In terms of how long this is going to go, I don't really have a schedule for it, so to speak. So it'll kind of go as long as, well, there's still stuff to talk about, I guess. Let me first talk about the Kickstarter for next week on November 10th. So when that one launches, it'll be about a 3-week Kickstarter. And some really exciting things about that one. So unlike the first Kickstarter, we did the 2019 BESM Kickstarter. The product was pretty well written and it was done and it had to go to press, had to go through a final round of edits and whatnot. So the Kickstarter ended in September. And then by November, the files were sent off to press into our Chinese factory. This is the first time we worked with the printer, and a bit of a mistake using that particular printer because while they got the files in February or in November, it took them an awfully long time to get things done. Now, of course, we know there was COVID and there was some lockdowns in China and they couldn't work. And so, there are some excuses. But after things were alleviated a little bit, problems still persist with delays. So that's why the products didn't come out until October of the physical print products. But that's done now. We're not going to be moving forward with that. So we have a new printers lined up, and in fact, one of the things we wanted to do to kind of make up for what we did in the first Kickstarter, but also because we had time during the COVID social distancing that we were forced to do, I had a lot more time in my hands to work on projects a lot faster than I thought I would. So we have 6 products that are going to be in the new Kickstarter, and they're not only are they done and finished, but they're actually printed as well, or just wrapping up printing. So this is a little different than most Kickstarters, where a company would run a Kickstarter, they'd get some funds, then they'd finish up either the design or the production, send it off to the factory, and then months or even years in some instances would go by before you get your pledge. The wonderful thing about doing the method that we had this time, which is a little different, and we don't usually do it this method, but while the Kickstarter is running, the products are going to be shipping from our overseas factory to our North American warehouse, which means in December, if everything goes well with customs and there's no shipping delays, we're actually going to have the product very shortly after the Kickstarter ends. So the Kickstarter ends early December, and by mid-December, all the 6 products are supposed to be in the factory, and then we're going to be fulfilling the Kickstarters very, very promptly after that. So if everything goes well, December is when we'll get it into everyone's hands in North America. That would be certainly the US would start. We'll have a separate shipment up in Canada. For international backers, it will probably be January because of the time we have to ship it out to all the international sub-factor or the sub-warehouses that we have in, say, Europe or Australia, and then they have to ship it out to the individual backers. So it might be a little bit longer than that, which is why we're saying a January fulfillment for the physical Kickstarter rewards. But if everything goes well, we're actually expecting a December fulfillment for USA in particular, and probably Canada as well. The PDF fulfillment will be effectively immediately. And the Kickstarter ends. Obviously, it takes a few days for Kickstarter to collect the pledges and then collect the late pledges, the ones that maybe the credit cards didn't get processed the first time. And then we have to run the Pledge Manager, which is kind of a software you can enter your address and give us all the other information, maybe change some add-ons or customize your pledge a little bit. And so once that phase is finished, which will be very quickly within a week or two after the Kickstarter ends, then at that point we can fulfill all the rewards, both of them physical and digital. So super excited about that. So I see that there are some questions that came through, and so I'll just go through those. So one of them, Hans, thanks for tuning in, Hans. You asked if there's any collaboration for an anime license. So interesting story about this. Obviously, whenever we were looking at doing licenses, this is one of the Kickstarter stretch goals. And the first one was for us to start pursuing licenses. Wasn't sure if we were going to do that, but the Kickstarter ran well and we had a stretch goal for it. So we've been pursuing several licenses. And the first one that we looked at, for obvious reasons, Sailor Moon. I have a history with it. I did the role-playing game the first time, and we already have an ongoing relationship with Toei Animation. And so during the pandemic, the game was written completely. It was a little bit different than your standard game. It was more like a beginner box set was kind of the impression for it. Submitted it for approval and was told that it would not be looked at. So not completely surprising because there are some language delays with Toei with some of the products. And so people might know it's been over a year and a half since the last product came out from our license. We have another one up for approval, another party game for Sailor Moon that they're looking at for Sailor Moon Crystal. But when he submitted the completed product for the role-playing game, they said no, that wasn't something they were interested in. Wasn't waste of time though, because the process that I needed to go through to determine what is the best way to do a licensed product for 4th edition BESM, given that, when we used to do the El Hazard, Tenchi Muyo, Sailor Moon, Dominion Tank Police, Demon City Shinjuku, plus all the Ultimate Fan Guides, the very first time back with, say, 2nd edition BESM, it was a very different industry back then, and the products were different. And so I needed to go through the process of understanding how a new 4th edition BESM licensed product is going to look like. So even though we spent all the time doing Sailor Moon, completed the project, and ultimately can't publish it in its current form, it doesn't mean that it was a waste of time. It just means that that particular product isn't going to happen. But we are still pursuing other licenses. We're in discussion on one in particular that we think there's a good chance for it, but licenses take some time to get underway. Not only just when we get the license, we have to research it, write it, play test it, and everything else. But the actual negotiations back and forth on licenses, particularly with a company in Japan, it takes a little bit of time. So we don't have anything, unfortunately, that we can announce. We're hoping within a few months we might, but obviously it's early November. Holidays are going to be coming up by the end of the year, and then we're into next year. So I don't know exactly when we're going to know. When we do have something signed and we're ready to announce it, we certainly will do so. We're really anxious to get a license because we think it'll be really good for the BESM line, but also good for fans of the series as well. So Hans, nothing yet, but we're working on that. So Milo, you asked about the various tiers. Yeah, I'm certainly happy to talk about that. In fact, what I'll do is talk about the products itself, so that kind of puts some perspective in terms of what's going on with the tiers itself. So the focus of the game is of the Kickstarter is BESM Extras. This is 144 pages. It's a full color book. This is the optional and expanded rules for Big Eye Smallmouth. So you don't need to have this. This is not essential. Everything you need to play the game is in the core book. But this is kind of like your add-on book that is going to give you those additional rules that you're going to want. Some gorgeous art in it. Obviously, we've been previewing some of that on Facebook. We have lots of different aspects of basically magic in here. We have lots of rules, called shots, and we have critical hits and whatnot. So this book here, spine kind of matches what's going on. The branding kind of matches what the current 4th edition core rulebook has. So this is kind of the focus of it. This is the main book. This is going to be a $35 product, the same price and size as BESM Naked. Again, 144 pages, full color, hardcover. And so that will be a $35 product. Of course, these can be purchased individually or pledged for individually as well as part of the different tiers. But I want to just run through what's of the 6 products of the new ones that's coming out. Then we have Dramatis Personae. So people who back the first Kickstarter or purchased them through drive-through independently, one of the stretch goals that we had were individual packages of 15 NPCs, full stat write-ups, backgrounds, and whatnot. And so we ended up doing 4 of those, a total of 60 characters. And then I realized, well, if we have this PDF that we already gave to everyone, maybe people will actually want, a nice hardcover as well. So once again, 144, full color cover within the branding line. And then this is going to be very familiar to anyone who has the 4 Dramatis Personae. So we're going to have we got the image, we got the background, we got the full stat write-ups. So, but what we've done is we've taken the four, combined it into one compilation product, but then we also added in another approximately a dozen. We added a little bit of information on some of the factions that could be in that, different groups that the characters are in. So that's another book, another $35, 144 full color. And so that's kind of product number 2. Then we have something new that we've never done before in the previous companies. This is 2D Animinies that we're calling them. And so this here are cardboard miniatures. So you can kind of see on the back, we have punch boards and then standees. And so let me just open it up and kind of give you a peek of what's inside. So we have punch boards and minis, both sides. And then we have different stands that you can use for them. So for example, let's just punch out one of these characters. So if you wanted to use this character, we have 3 different sizes of stands that we're including, and it's really simple. You're just putting them in, right? And there's your little mini that you can have. Now BESM itself isn't a miniatures game, and it isn't really a tactical movement game. But we know people like having visual representations around the table. And we thought a great way for us to do it in a cost-effective way, because in the end, producing actual physical minis are very expensive, especially if they're not done in massive quantities. And so this was a great way to have those full-color little miniatures on your table, whether you're using them to represent your characters or you're using them to represent NPCs or monsters in the game. So what we have in the punch boards, we have a various different a lot of them are characters, of course, but we also have monsters. We have creatures. So we got a dragon and Pegasus and a horse. So you get your little slime over here. So there are over 100 on these punch boards. This one here is just a little bit more full color rather than the individual ones. And so lots of different minis that people can use, along with the 3 different sizes that we have of the bases. So that is another $35 product that we have if people are interested in pledging for that. So that's the 3rd one. The 4th one that we had, really excited about this one, and this is our dice tower and dice trays. So what the product is going to look like is it going to come in a large package like this, and this is a poly bag with a little swing tag. People can hang it on the retail stores. And what is here is a constructible cardboard punch out of a dice tower. And then here's our dice tray. So that dice tower. So these are things that allow you to roll the dice, but keep them in a single place, kind of controlled at the table rather than just throwing them and then have to go everywhere on the table. A dice tower is something that you can control the location of the dice, and it just keeps them really compact. And so you punch it out, and then there's a really brief, easy set of instructions where you're going to be putting together the tower. And in the end, what it looks like is this. So this is from Aradia, the Prime World, which is kind of like your fairy tale fantasy world. And this is a water slide tree. So what we did is we had the artist create what looks like a tree on the outside with the winged lemurs are bringing up water from the lake here, and they're putting at the top of the tree. And then you have your Azrai here, and then of course, as we know, the main character from the book, she's in her bathing suit, and she's sliding down the center of the tree, which is the water slide, until they come out the bottom. It's right there. So they're sliding out there, and they will land into a pond. So this is just a little evocative way of doing it. So we have a moose, and we have the winged lemur taking a swim, and some Azrai just sitting on the edges. It's a really simple and easy to construct, but it's a great way to keep something super compact. And so you throw your dice in the top, and they roll down, and they come out the bottom. I should have thought of having some dice, but imagine this, a die. You put it in there, and boom, it comes out the bottom and in a controlled way. And so this is the BESM Dice Tower. With the package, you get the Dice Tower, which is 2 different cardboard sheets that you punch out and then construct it, but also dice trays. So these are neoprene dice trays that have little snaps on them where you snap them together to take a picture that we had from BESM. This is from the Prime World of Cathedral. And what you do is once you get them together, there's 2 of them that's in there. So this one here, so that's, she's super kick-ass samurai that needs a breather mask. A little bit maybe foretelling of what was happening in the pandemic. But as you can see, there's four corners, so three of them have been snapped. So in the last one, you just get your snaps here. You just put them together easily. They snap, and then you have your dice tray. So what this is it just sits on the table and then you roll your dice inside it. So unlike a dice tower, which goes down and kind of bounces around to generate a random number as it comes out, this is just a little tray that you can have. It's has the BESM branding on it, just like this one here. Again, BESM branding. And so when you put them together, like super easy, and then also easy to take apart and flatten it out. So in the dice tower, you get two of these, as well as the constructible dice tower. That's, again, $35. People can pledge for that. It works great with the BESM dice, but you can, of course, use it for any game, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or Yahtzee or whatever you want. It's just a dice tower, a place that kind of brands with BESM. We're really happy with how the visual of this worked. We think it's really kind of nice. It's not essential by any means. This isn't BESM Extras. It doesn't change your game, but it's a nice thing to have on the table. So those are for the products, and then the last two are a little bit smaller. So the first one is an adventure. This is a 32-page adventure, saddle stitched. And so this is going to be familiar to anyone that has the PDF. This is Carousel Obscura. So this is the PDF of the adventure that we gave out, again, as part of the stretch goals. If you're happy with the PDF, you don't need to back this. But if people want a physical copy for their shelves, just kind of complete the set, this is a great way to get it. And so this is rather inexpensive. This is only $15. And then finally, the last one we're actually doing in partnership with Japan Anime Games, Tokyo Sidekick. So this is similar to Dramatis Persona in many ways, that what we did is they have a board game coming out, Tokyo Sidekick. It's a really great superhero anime game, not unlike, say, My Hero Academia, for example. These are anime superheroes, and each one has a sidekick and the main hero. And so what we did is we took their characters, and we have the sidekick, and we have the hero, and we got their pictures, we statted them out, we had their little write-ups there. And so there's 12 heroes and 12 of the sidekicks. So this is 24 new NPCs that you can use, more of a superhero bend to it. Again, simple game. It's only $10. It's a little simple expansion. And so those are the 6 different products that are going to be available. So people can pledge for them individually or pledge for them in tiers. And so in terms of the tiers, let me just call up what I have here on my phone just to make sure I don't make any mistakes on the pledge tiers. So the main tier that we have, you can pledge as low as, well, let me step back. So there's 2 different type of people that I think are going to be pledging for this game in the Kickstarter for BESM Extras. There's going to be people who have already pledged initially on the first Kickstarter and are only looking for the new stuff, particularly maybe even just the core new stuff, like BESM Extras, for example. And then there's going to be people who are new and they kind of want everything involved. So in terms of the pledge levels, there are PDF only pledge levels. One of the things that for $25, you could get the BESM Extras, the 2D Animini's, and the Tokyo Sidekick, effectively only the new stuff. And you can go ahead and pledge for that. That's $25. If you just want BESM Extras, the print edition is $35. Of course, it'd be half the price for a PDF edition only. If you just want the PDFs, maybe you're international, you don't like the higher shipping fees, or maybe you work digitally only, then for $40, you can get access to all the PDFs of the different products. So that's all 6, and PDFs of all the new stuffs. It jumps from 40 then for a complete package up to 160. And what this is print and digital copies of all 6 new products. So that's extras and the Animidis and Dramatis Personae. You got the Dice Tower, you got the Adventure, and you got Tokyo Sidekick. So 160 will get you all 6 of the new products, and you get the free PDFs that go along with it. So you get the physical products as well as the PDFs. There is also a package that we're offering that is kind of for people that are new to BESM. So they want the core book and they want to get BESM Extras because it is kind of an essential type product, but they're not looking at getting maybe some of the accessory type stuff. So this is something that we're going to throw in the GM screen, and they're getting the Dice Tower as well, and a set of dice. So they're not interested in everything, but it's kind of like the great ways you can just start playing the game. So that's 165. And then the next ones, it jumps up quite a lot to 300. So for 300, that is every single product. So maybe someone didn't back the first Kickstarter, just wants to jump into BESM and wants everything we have, which is 12 products currently. And they would get the print and the PDF editions to all those. Above 300, I mean, which is a lot of money for people to jump in, but that does give you 12 products. Above that, we have opportunities for people to get a little bit more. And we're not going to talk about that right now, but it's we have some opportunities to get into some play testing for some of the other product lines we're doing, and it's come some exclusive access. Hey, if you want to be in a game that I'm going to be running digitally, take a look at some of the higher tier stuff. And there's some pretty cool rewards there, completely optional. The core products themselves are much less expensive, but sometimes people are looking for that little more. And in other Kickstarters for role-playing games, I know a lot of my company friends do, they may have like a Gen Con tournament that you can participate in, or the designer runs a Gen Con game and you're invited to it. Well, obviously, physical access might not be quite what it is in 2021. We don't know what's going to happen. So I'll be doing some stuff digitally, both with running some games as well as maybe giving, if people want, some design time, some one-on-one on a video, I'll certainly make myself available for that. So that's a long time. It wasn't intended to turn this into a commercial, but I wanted to make sure I was complete with the question. Those are all the tiers that are going to be available for starting next week on the 10th. So thanks very much for the question. Just running through some of the other ones. So William, you asked, the next one was, will extras have any new or old attributes in it? There are a few new things in BESM, in extras, and that part of them, they go along with the new rules that we're doing as well. So we're bringing in a concept of sanity points, for example. Someone wants to run a horror game and they want to have the concepts of a shock to a character system when they see like a great demon that comes out, and there's this fear type element, sanity. If you play Call of Cthulhu, it would be certainly very similar to that as a concept, though we implement it very differently. So there's some attributes that go along with sanity. There's some attributes that go along with social combat as a new set of rules that we're putting in BESM Extras. So this is a way of two characters bantering at a party, maybe in a bit of a crowd, and they're trying to one-up each other in a social setting using social combat rules. Well, we have attributes to support that, as well as some additional enhancements and limiters for specific products. So for example, with force fields, one of the things we're introducing is like an airtight force field. And so that is a different type of enhancement that we have if you want to create something that allows you to have a force field and like go underwater, for example. So yes, there are some new attributes, but it's not an attribute game. Like when we did 4th edition, that was intended to be all the core element aspects that you need. And a lot of those things that you think, well, you're missing this. It's probably going to be very specific and very niche, which is why it wasn't included in the game. We expanded out to a few new rules with the attributes and defects, but there's not a lot of more of that. More extras is more about rule expansions and concepts you're looking at. So we talk about mass combat, armies fighting each other. We have a diceless version of BESM that we cover, as well as over 70 different items that we also have in the book. And I've been previewing some of that as we go. If you follow along with the Dyskami Facebook page or any of the other places we posted. And so these are lots of items that you can use either as they are or use them as examples of what you could do and could create on your own. So thanks for the question for that. Hans, back to you. You asked translations. Nothing that we can talk about now. We're certainly open for doing translations, but one of maybe the disadvantages, a lot of conventions are used for meeting up with different companies and discussing things. I mean, networking opportunities at conventions, very, very common, but there was no Origins this year, no Gen Con. Next year, the Gamma Expo, which is kind of the big one in Nevada that is held, used to be in Las Vegas, now it's in Reno, and that's kind of a business-only one. That was the last convention we went to. In fact, I was at the convention in Reno in March, and I flew out of Reno back to our office here in Canada. And just a couple days after that, we ended up closing the border because that was just when the pandemic was striking. So Gamma has announced that the 2021 Gamma Expo is going to be only virtual. And so once again, it's another opportunity to miss to sitting down and network with some of these different companies about doing foreign translation. So we're still interested in it, but we don't have anything immediate that's going to come out. We're more interested in partnering with other companies that can do a better job localized in their, whether it's France or Germany or Brazil or whatnot. When we've done some some foreign translations with previous editions of BESM. We did the Sailor Moon game, and I think it was in German. There was a Spanish edition of BESM D20. So these are things that we're still interested in doing, absolutely, but nothing immediately on the horizon. Our focus has really been on creating. And now that we're going to have 12 products coming out this year, the ones that already came out of the 6 from the previous Kickstarter, and then the 6 for the new one. So we've been focusing on that, but we're not ignoring the translations. Eric, you asked about a Chance of Fantasy Grounds version. So one of the stretch goals that we're going to have in BESM Extras is to do a digital character sheet, a digital version. I think what we've selected is Roll20. That seems to be a choice that is better for our company, I think, for doing that. There's a learning curve to doing a correct implementation of the character sheets and the rules for any of these virtual tabletop games. And quite frankly, if we don't have a certain amount of funds to do that, because it takes time and takes money, or it takes a lot of expertise, and that we just don't have with the people in the company here. So because of that, we'll be looking at contracting some of that out and bringing someone on to do a really good implementation of BESM 4th edition. But we're going to be focused on Roll20, I think is the place we're going to go. It's not 100% set, and it is still a stretch goal, so it's something we're looking at, certainly. But again, it hasn't been our main focus. We wanted to make sure we got the game out and that we supported this next product launch of the 6 products. So Hans, how do you buy the product once the Kickstarter's done? So that's a great thing. Of course, anything from that we ever produce will be available in multiple different ways. It's going to be available on our retail store, of course. The Dyskami one we sell in the Canada market, and then our partner Japan Games sells internationally into the U.S. Primarily. And so certainly if someone can't pledge on the Kickstarter or chooses not to pledge on the Kickstarter, you can always purchase from our store afterwards. Certainly no problem doing that. Past that, of course, it's retail stores. BESM 4th edition core book and the products that came out in the initial Kickstarter are now out in the wild, and we've seen them in online stores. I've seen them in physical stores, and so it's available right now. If it's not in your local store, talk to your local store and ask them to get it in. We certainly are willing to distribute worldwide, and there's Japan Games is our sales partner, and they have a lot of contacts with distributors worldwide with all the products that Japan Games sells through, which is one of the reasons we partnered with them is the access that they have and the networks that they've already established is just a really, really good benefit for BESM. And so you can get them online from us. You can get them from your local retail store or an online store, of course. And then for the PDF versions, drive-through. They're always available there if you want to go exclusively digital, saves on the shipping, but it is only a digital product at that point. There's a couple main reasons to pledge on the Kickstarter, if it's something you're interested in, if the timing works out and the funding works out, is that for all the physical products that are available in the Kickstarter, as a free bonus to thank you for pledging in the Kickstarter, we give the PDF along with the physical product. And that doesn't happen any other time. If you buy it in a retail store, you don't get the PDF. You buy it from our online store after the Kickstarter. Again, the PDF's not available, but we do bundle it together. For all the physical print products, you get the PDF through drive-through as well for free. And so that's one of the things that we want to thank people, because we know obviously we couldn't do the Kickstarter without the support of the fans. Milo asked about we'll be updating the PDFs with the extra info. So we're going to have a new PDF, which is BESM Extras, will be uploaded. The old PDFs stand as they are. So none of the material in BESM Extras will be in the, for example, BESM core book. You'd get the 2 different products, and they do stand alone. BESM core book itself doesn't need what's in the extras. It's something that's an add-on. People want it and they like it, great, but it's certainly not necessary to play BESM. Sorry, I should have read one more line later, the Dramatis Personae. We're exploring what to do with that, because obviously some people have the first 4, and then we have a little bit of extra content on there for the additional stuff we did for the hardcover, and we will make that available as a separate PDF for people that only need the additional. They don't need the everything else if they're looking at just digital versions of it. So we will make those additional characters and the information about the organizations. We'll make that available as a PDF, absolutely. So the rat hole, hey, thanks for coming in. You asked about the acrylic stretch goals. So we aren't interested in doing acrylic, and for a number of reasons. So one is the number of standees that we can offer by doing it cardboard was massive, over 100. Where the acrylic standees are very expensive, and they don't offer any more utility. And in many ways, I actually find that the reproductions on the cardboard ones with the printing is a little my preference. I think it looks better than the acrylic ones. And so at this point, the acrylic standees, they work great for Japanime games as kind of like an add-on to their board games. And that's wonderful. But the cost of us doing it for over 100 BESM figures just doesn't seem to be cost effective. And certainly as a stretch goal, the number of copies we'd have to produce would be very high in order to make it financially viable. And so we're not probably looking at that as a stretch goal for the Kickstarter. And then I see that Roland. So this is Peter Flanagan has chimed in. So Peter is the line developer of the relaunch of Silver Age Sentinels, our superhero role playing game. So it's called Absolute Power, and that's the second edition of the Silver Age Sentinels. Name change. It kind of reflects a little bit of what's happening in the superhero world. I mean, although many of you might be here for BESM, just to not ignore what's coming out in 2021 for Absolute Power. So Silver Age Sentinels was set in 2001. So it was set 20 years ago, and Absolute Power is set 20 years later in 2021. So a lot has changed in the world in terms of what's happening with the characters and the movers and shakers in the world. Some characters have passed, been killed. Some have disappeared. Some have changed sides. Either they've gone good to bad or neutral. Some have redeemed themselves. Other one have fallen to the darkness. And Absolute Power is the name of the superhero game. Kind of wasn't meant to encapsulate, the famous line that people have is, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And one of the things that's going to be very difficult for a group of heroic superheroes to do, and when they see everything that's happening in the world, it's so tempting to reach just a little bit further to grab a little bit more power because it'll keep you safer. And this is for the good of everyone. I just need that little bit more power because that's how I can do my job as a superhero better. And there's a certain danger to that when you get too much power. We're not going the boys route. This isn't a full-on darkness of the main characters of the Guard, the superheroes, kind of like our Justice League or our Avengers team. We're not going full-on the boys there, but it's not as Silver Agey perhaps as it used to be, which is why the name change was important. So I see that Roland or Peter has jumped on and talk about that, which is great. He, in addition to the Absolute Power, I first met Peter, of course, way back when we did Silver Age Sentinels the first time, but then I brought him on to do Dramatis Personae. And so he actually did that whole book. He did the 4 PDFs of the 15 characters, and then he added on those extra 12, and his work is spectacular. I'm so happy with how the characters turned out. It just made sense to transition him. He had the experience with Silver Age Sentinels. He had experience with writing for BESM and understanding the system. So bringing him over to handle the Absolute Power line was a great decision for the company. And so he's been working hard on that. Some really exciting stuff coming from that. We got some art pouring in, which is really great as well. And so that will be a 2021 release. We are probably looking at mid to late, say Q3, Q4 for the release on that. We don't like kind of projecting too much because and I have a lot of history in running companies in the gaming industry. And far too often we would make an announcement of, hey, we're going to do this. And we ended up blowing our timelines. And so that kind of happened with the first BESM Kickstarter, although I'd like to think it wasn't our fault. In the end, we chose the printer. So, it does fall back on us. But I'm not willing to commit at this point when Absolute Power is going to be out because we need to be a lot closer to getting it finished. For people that are wondering the difference between Absolute Power and BESM 4th edition, from a system point of view, they're almost exactly the same. So unlike previously if anyone followed Guardians of Order in the past, we had BESM 2nd edition, and we had Silver Age Sentinels, we had Tristat DX, we had kind of all these different versions of Tristat and how we're implementing it, and it made sense at the time what we're doing. But now we have one system. It is the new Tristat, the new implementation in BESM 4th edition, which we think is spectacular. And because it's a roll over system as opposed to the old roll under system, it now scales perfectly well. So you can run human level, high school hijinks types games, like your slice of life cooking anime game if you wanted, all the way up to planet destroying superheroes. And so that's with the one system. So that's what's going to be coming out with Absolute Power in 2021. All right. It looks like some of the questions have wrapped up, which is good. So keep them coming if anything comes up. But let me talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're doing. And I can, of course, go back and touch upon the Kickstarter. But right now, one of the things that we're offering in the Kickstarter on the highest reward tiers that we mentioned is access to some of our playtesting that we're doing on and early access some of these files for some new projects we have coming out next year. The first one is an expansion and reimagining of TriStat. Now, this isn't a different version of TriStat, but this is a different presentation of TriStat. And what we're doing is a series of box sets, almost like beginner box sets. Think of the old Dungeons and Dragons, red boxes, or the blue box, going back a long time ago. We're not retroing the game, but the presentation is going to be more of a box set. And so the first one we have coming out is called Pixie. And so this is a game where you're playing small little 6 centimeter tall creatures living in houses. For example, you can think of the Borrowers or Arrietty, if you're a fan of Studio Ghibli. We're going to be coming out with a game of that, which is a TriStat game and uses the same system, but it presents it in a slightly different way to simplify things greatly. And so rather than with BESM, say, when we have here's the BESM core game, 300 and 54 pages, or 52 pages, because it had everything in here. This is a multi-genre game meant to cover every level of genre and every conceivable genre. That's what the universal game system was. But when we go really specific to one particular type of setting, like Pixies, we know the power levels are all going to be within a very narrow range. We know the types of settings. This isn't Pixies in space or Pixies in World War II and then Pixies here and there. It's modern day Pixies living in houses or in gardens, and all the trials and tribulations going to be involved in dealing with cats, which are gigantic, of course, to get rid of the Pixies, or dealing with those pesky humans when they should be out of the house and give it up to the Pixies, and all the struggles that are there. And so we've managed to take the TriStat system and bring it into a core book that is only 32 pages long, and without anything being missing what's needed for a Pixie game. So you couldn't run all the things you can run with BESM, but that was never the intent. So this is a genre-specific and setting-specific type of almost like micro games. So Pixie will have a box set. It'll include some dice, some TriStat dice. It'll include the core rulebook. It'll include some pre-made characters. It'll include some adventure seeds. So these are everything you need to jump in and start playing right away. And it's going to be a lot less expensive of a price tag as well. And so this is a new line that we're coming out with, our TriStat games, which are very specific, very focused. And Pixie's our first one. We have a couple other ones that we're looking at for the next ones to do, but that's one of the products we have coming out, is a new way of looking at TriStat. And so thanks, Tommy, for enthusiasm. We are so excited about this because it's great. I mean, BESM is so good, but what we often hear about complaints about BESM is like, where do I start? It's too big, it's too grand, and because we intend to cover everything with it, we can't be specific. We can't tell you this is how magic works, because it is intended to cover all types of magic. Well, in Pixie, we know Pixie magic works in a very specific way, and it is not an open-ended magic. Here are spells, and they have access to this many spells, and that's it. And so it is a throwback to an older style of game, a more focused style of game, and we think you'll be excited about it too if you like the TriStat system. So that's one of the products. The other one we're super excited about, and this is Anime 5e. So this is not, make sure I hear this, this is not the next edition of BESM D20. This is Anime 5e, which is an anime version of Dungeons and Dragons. This is bringing point-based balanced system onto Dungeons and Dragons, which sounds like BESM D20, a new version of that. So BESM D20 came out. I had worked on that, and this is with the previous company. And it was our answer to what was going on with D20. We thought, let's bring in BESM D20, anime D20. But what it really was BESM shoehorned in with the D20 system in order to kind of show everyone how good BESM was. And hey, if you like this, if you're a D20 player, look at how great we are. You should be playing BESM as well. And we didn't really, I certainly didn't respect the source material back then. I wouldn't say I was looking for a quick payout. It wasn't quite the jump on the bandwagon for money, but it was a let's educate people how much better BESM is than D20 system. And ultimately, that's going to be a failed enterprise. Now, some people use it, BESM D20. They love BESM D20. I did a poll, and it was actually the second edition was everyone's favorite, more or less the favorite. But the next one is BESM D20. Some people loved it. Anime 5e is a very, very different game. And I didn't know that I'd be designing this, but again, COVID and pandemic, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started taking the D&D system for 5th edition and deconstructing it down to its core elements and saying, what can I do to bring a point-based approach and a balanced approach to Dungeons and Dragons, but also give it that anime bend. So kind of blend the best of D&D and BESM into one, but not in a way that makes BESM better. This is not BESM with a D20 / 5th edition bend. This is Dungeons and Dragons with an anime bend and a point-based system of rewards. And so we took everything that was in the core book for the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual, and we understood how everything would be constructed from a point base based on what we presented in BESM. So all of your different attributes and how they function, but also looking at your all the different aspects of your proficiencies in 5th edition and how the classes work and the class abilities and how spells work and the spell progression charts, and mathematically broke everything down and then rebuilt everything back up to balance everything out. If you were to look at the core book of Dungeons and Dragons and ask everyone what's the most powerful class, everyone would have an answer. And it would probably, if you asked enough people, you'd get some classes are more powerful than others. Very few would say the Bard class is the most powerful, where maybe the Wizard class would come out on top more often. And so when we looked at the point-based breakdown and what these different classes or races can do, based on the elements that we had in BESM and the attributes that we have, we think we could rebalance all the races from 5th edition, rebalance all the classes, and then bring in a whole bunch of new anime classes and anime positions. So we have isekai students, we have samurai, and we have ninja. And these aren't all isekai type ideas. Like you can have, of course, an anime ninja, right? Like an anime ninja in a fantasy setting. And so with Anime 5e, it's roughly 280 pages book is what we're looking at. And this is the best of 5th edition and is fully compatible with 5th edition, but it brings that point-based, effects-based lens. So the spell system in 5th edition, all those spells you can use in Anime 5e. We have a system that you can use the spells. So this isn't like dynamic powers that ignores anything to do with spells. This is a full version of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's an anime version. It is under the gaming license that they have, and so we don't tread on any tread marks, or we don't talk about Dungeons and Dragons in the game. But this is what I would call Anime 5e. It is not BESM 5e. This is not BESM. This is anime. This is 5th edition with anime bend. I can't stress that enough. And the reason why is because I find, looking back on what I did with BESM D20, a little distasteful, a lot of arrogance at the time, and what I thought was best, and everyone needs to play our game at BESM. So this new version, significantly better. Anime 5e is going to be great. Got some amazing cover art. You can play slimes. Dungeons and Dragons slimes. You have your wizard, you can have your rogue and your cleric, and then I'm a slime. Or we have the Azrai. You can play demonic type characters. Again, this is taking a lot of what we did in BESM and bringing it over. And so That's something else that we're bringing in from on the playtesting from the higher level tiers for the Kickstarter, and that'll be another thing that we're releasing next year. It's a new line, but our focus is BESM. There's no doubt that is going to be our kind of our main focus for the game. But Anime 5e can certainly exist unto itself, and it can have a GM screen, and it can have a character folios, maybe even some dice, a dice tower. Haven't fully worked out what we're doing. My main focus at this point has been on the core game, but that's one more product that I've been working on over these past numerous months of physical distancing from all my friends. And so I guess the loneliness has made me more productive, and so I guess that's good for the company in many ways. Thanks for listening about that. And it's great to see. I always say that BESM 20 got you into BESM, and that's a great introduction. I hope that you like more what we're doing fourth edition BESM 20, which I think was okay at the time, but fifth edition Anime 5e is far better. So that is a couple of the other things you're doing next year. Wanted to go back and talk until some more questions come up a little bit more about the future of the BESM line. And so this is we're at a bit of a crossroads with this because there were several questions or several products we talked about and we planned for example, the multiverse book. There's the individual splat books of the different worlds, and then there's the LARP book. And so those are, when we looked at the fourth edition book, I actually talked that we were going to be doing the multiverse. We were going to be doing the LARP book. And then, of course, stemming from the multiverse book, it made sense to focus on the different worlds as well and do more settings. Of course, there's always NPCs and adventures. You can always throw more of that in. But with all the work that I was doing focusing on this, I have not been able to find the right writer to start on that multiverse book. And it's something I decided I was not going to write because I believe my stronger focus is going to be on the rule systems and working with that. And so that's why I created the Pixie game, created Anime 5e. My game design, maybe my strength, comes from system design, not creativity. And the multiverse is going to be able to involve a lot more creativity than I think I was willing to engage with. And so we're talking to a number of people to get that done. But because of that, there was a delay. And obviously, again, wasn't meeting people at conventions. Usually we have meetings with freelancers at Gen Con and Origins. And well, that didn't happen this year. So after this product bunch comes out at the Kickstarter in December, there's going to be a bit of a lag before the next BESM 4th edition product comes out. From a Kickstarter point of view, if you pledge it on the Kickstarter, you're getting anything you pledge for, you'll get right away in December/January. In retail stores, we're not going to be releasing everything right away. So when we finished the first Kickstarter and we delivered all the rewards in September, October, we sent out to retail stores all the products of that launch, the core book, naked, GM screen, folio, dice, all that went out in one shot to retail stores, which is why you can find the whole set in many retail stores. But because we knew there'd be a bit of a lag to get the next BESM products done, what we're doing is you're going to be dripping 2 products a month in February, April, and June. Of the 6 that are releasing during this Kickstarter, February, April, and June, there's going to be 2 of those products per month getting released into the retail chain, which means we're going to be sitting on inventory in the warehouse, and that's fine. But we know that's better for the BESM line because we need to make sure that retailers are constantly seeing BESM products coming out. And so we have the first 6 months of the year, there'll be products coming out into retail stores. When you think of a normal company size, small company, not Wizard of the Coast or anything like that, but most of the time you have smaller companies that will release occasionally, maybe quarterly, maybe every few months, a product will come out for that that line that they're supporting. And so that's what we're doing. Every 2 months, 2 more products come out. So we have the first 6 months lined up, and that will give us a chance to catch up on some of the other stuff we're doing, particularly the BESM Multiverse. That's the next big book I want to get done. We are looking at maybe some other things. You can never have too many adventures, never have too many NPCs, never have too many, small little game aspects that we can put out with. And that's the drive-through is a great resource for doing really small things that we want to get out there quickly, no problem with that. But the Best of Multiverse book is a book we want to make sure we do it right, and it's going to be a fairly large, meatier book with a lot of content and a lot of setting information, as well as all the examples of specific applications in the world, like how does magic work in Aradia, for example. So in fourth edition, we have to be very vague and open-ended with magic because it's intended to cover any types of magic, your types of magic and their types of magic, my types of magic. Where Aradia, because it's a specific setting, we can set up parameters about this is how magic works, or in Cathedral, this is how FTL, faster than light travel, works, for example. And so that is what the multiverse is. That's our next big one. We are going to be expanding it with other worlds past there. If the line seems to be successful, we'll certainly continue with that. Then there's the BESM LARP book, and that's an interesting one because no one would have predicted the pandemic. It's kind of difficult to do LARPs when you can't be around people, right? And conventions were certainly one of the big I guess, applications of a LARP book. I mean, sure, people can run LARPs in their hometown, their local game stores, but certainly we know that conventions are a really great place to run LARPs, and especially with the anime conventions. So anime conventions run LARPs all the time, even though they're not gaming conventions, but they're very, very common. So that is the one project that's probably had the biggest delay because we have not been able to interact with people to do any kind of testing or setting things up. And it is mainly a system book, a lot of it, of course. And so it's taking BESM the way it is and how do you turn that into the LARP to make sure things are streamlined and whatnot. So that is still a book that's on the docket. It's planned. Originally in my head, it was kind of like a 2021, 2022. Still like to get out in 2022, and there's no way it can be 2021. We don't even know if there's going to be a single convention in 2021 at this point, unfortunately. So we have to make sure we keep everyone safe and happy as much as we can be during the distancing part. So the LARP thing is probably the biggest delay of the BESM line, and that is a lot of what LARP is. So that's kind of the focus of the future of the BESM line. We're in discussion about maybe doing a little bit of fiction on that. Not really sure. Of course, as you may know, we actually don't own BESM. This is a White Wolf or Paradox, their parent company, owns the license, and they're licensing it to us. So we have to, of course, run everything through them. And they liked everything we've been doing so far. But in terms of what the future is, we can have plans, but specifically the implementation, we do have to get approval with that. So as you can see, with Absolute Power, Tri-Stat micro games, Anime 5e. We have a lot coming out next year, and then dripping in the retail stores this Kickstarter of the next 6 products as well. So we're looking at. Thanks for all the comments, everyone. While I'm talking into the camera, I don't have a chance to read everything, but I do appreciate everything you're writing. So Milo asks, will the multiverse book and the splat books be a Kickstarter too? So Kickstarter has changed, well, everything for smaller companies like ourselves. Just to give you a real brief rundown of how kind of production works. So when you're going to produce a game, you're going to have the cost of doing the writing, you have the cost of doing your art, then you have the cost of development, which often may be a line developer, could be proofreaders or whatnot, editors, and then you have the layout costs. Plus, you have to get things printed. So you have your factory costs, and then you have your shipping costs and your distribution costs. So in the old model back 20 years ago with Guardians of Order, we wanted to do a product. We would take all the responsibility on ourselves. We would fund all the writing, all the art. Then we'd send it off to press and we'd pay all the printing, and you'd guess on how many copies you needed. Maybe you'll talk to some of your game distributors and kind of get an idea, but a lot of it was crystal balling. It's like, do I print 2,000 copies, 5,000 copies, 1,000 copies? You never know how many copies you're going to need. So you're kind of guessing with all of that. And so the company would invest all the money into art and writing and production and development and editing and to get the product, and then you hope it sells in retail stores. And whenever something, of course, sells in the retail stores, you get a small percentage, say 30 to 40% of the cover price. So if a book is $100, then the company gets $30 or $40 of that product, depending on what channels you're using. So that was the old method of doing stuff. Well, Kickstarter changed things completely. And a lot of companies will use the funds. They'll say they have an idea, they have the implementation started, maybe it's something's half written, maybe it's a concept only and they've only had the beginning of it. Maybe they have a few pieces of art, but they don't have a lot. And so they've invested very little up front, and then they run a Kickstarter, and then if there's interest from the fans, that gives the funds in advance to then pay for everything else to finish the product, get that extra art in, get to finish up that writing, and then also get the money to print the books as well and get them shipped into the warehouse. And a lot of Kickstarters, especially for small companies, they don't have distribution, that they're not in the retail store. So if you want a copy of their game, you get it through the Kickstarter or maybe from their website afterwards, either through Facebook or PayPal or something. But a lot of them may not appear in retail stores. Not the big companies. CMON miniatures games, for example, they're going to be everywhere. Or AEG is board game company, they're going to be there. You got Green Ronin with when they do their role playing games, you know that you're going to be able to find it in retail stores. But a lot of the smaller companies, they don't have retail distribution. So when you look at what we're doing with our company, we have kind of used a bit of a hybrid model, and a lot of it is because of the success of BESM fourth edition, which provided some of that seed money, which is why these Kickstarters are so important. So at the very beginning, a lot of the work was, and the cost and the risk, Dyskami bore that, hoping that the Kickstarter could be successful to provide funds to then keep the line going. Because when the Kickstarter was run, the all the production and the in terms of the writing and the development of all that was all done by Dyskami on Dyskami's costs, and knowing that with any luck the Kickstarter would produce funds to allow the physical books to be printed. It did well enough to provide a cushion that now some of that money that we took from the first Kickstarter allowed us to get a bunch of the art done in advance for some of these other projects, and it gave us that capital funding from the first Kickstarter to fund future books. And now, if things go well on the next Kickstarter, as we hope that they will do, then that constantly generates more and more capital from the Kickstarter. Because right now, obviously, when the Kickstarter is being run, as I already mentioned, the 6 products are done. They're printed. Everything was paid for. All costs done. Every artist was paid. Every writer was paid. All the printing was paid. The development costs were all done. And that was because the first Kickstarter was successful. And so any funds that we derive from that BESM Extra Kickstarter is going to help put it into the company to then fund the production of Anime 5e and Absolute Power and the BESM Multiverse book, and maybe licensing fees for new stuff. And so we're looking at using Kickstarter not just to cover production costs, because if that was the case, it's a very different model if you're just trying to put something on Kickstarter to hope to get enough money to print the book. Very, very different from what we're trying to do. We're trying to build the line using Kickstarter. And while it's not essential for every company, it has greatly changed the industry from when I was in, with Guardians of Order 20, 25 years ago. The company would have been in a very different position. And even large companies like CMON, Cool Minis or not, they used to be called, so CMON or AEG, use Kickstarter very, very successfully, even though these companies are huge and they don't need Kickstarters in order to physically print the products. Because, if CMON wants to print a new Zombicide miniatures game, they have the cash to do it. But the marketing benefits of Kickstarter and the funding that they can get through it just makes sense that they're having a direct relationship with the consumers like you, and that relationship is really important. And we don't get that when we sell things through distribution, and then that distribution goes through retail stores, and then a consumer purchases from a retail store. We're a little bit more disconnected from them versus having that immediate connection through the Kickstarter. And many of the people, of course, you commenting right now, we had that connection on the Kickstarter, and it's continued on the Dyskami or the BESM Facebook pages. It's continued on the Discord page, which is a fantastic resource. If you are not part of that Discord, that the TriStat Discord, absolutely jump on that. Do not miss it. There's some great fan resources there. And it's a real community, and the Kickstarter has a real benefit financially, it's a benefit. There's no doubt because we don't have to divide up the funds with distribution and retailers. We have to give a little bit to Kickstarter, of course, but we get more of that funds into the company to allow us to have better art and more art and pay our writers a little bit more and have that stability of going forward to take a risk on a project that maybe we're not sure is going to do as well. Well, Kickstarter allows us to do that. So that was a very long answer, I know, Milo, and thank you for that. The plan at this point is if something is large enough to justify it, we see a reason to do Kickstarters. So if we are going to do a 24-page splat book on NPCs or something like a dramatis personae style book, just like a small 16-pager or whatnot, and we could just maybe either just print it and shoot it out there or put it on to drive through as a PDF and not worry about a Kickstarter. But with the Kickstarters, when we do Anime 5e, that is a core book that we'd like to launch a Kickstarter on. When we do Pixie, for example, we might do Pixie by itself. We might do Pixie and something else, maybe 2 or 3 of the new TriStat style games together. And so, like even with this new BESM Extras Kickstarter, we're not just kickstarting BESM Extras. We're kickstarting 6 products, and doing that is a great way for us to continue. And so, Absolute Power will have its own Kickstarter. Anime 5e its own Kickstarter. We might not do a Kickstarter for everything, but it's going to be it's an important part of our business model at this point. Things may change in the future, and I don't know what's going to happen with the Kickstarter next week. But if it plays out as well as I think it might, based on kind of the interactions we had and the reach we had with the first Kickstarter, it's absolutely going to be part of our business model going forward. So thanks for the really good question for that. So the multiverse book, whenever we're ready to do it, it'll be Kickstarter, but we're not going to do it a Kickstarter until the book is done or nearly done. That's our way of doing Kickstarters. You will not see from us a Kickstarter for a project that we're then going to develop over the next year. Not going to happen. A book is going to be done or nearly done, and then we Kickstart it to help fund the last bit. That's why when I mentioned, say, the first BESM 4th edition, the Kickstarter ended in September and the printer files were off in November. Now, it was a big screw up and it took a lot longer to get the books done, but the project was done. And we do not want to have projects hanging overhead. I know people who have back Kickstarters for RPG products, and it's been 5 years and they still haven't got all the pledges in. So not going to do that. Not going to do that. So keep an eye. We'll make sure everyone knows what we're going to be running for Kickstarters. All right, and just looking, thanks Tommy for the mention on that. And HR, she asked about the prices for the Kickstarter on extras and Absolute Power. Yeah, so the basic breakdown, $160 is all 6 new products plus PDFs. If you don't want those, you can always get things individually, or you can get one of the other kind of pre-packaged tiers, which packages only the newer stuff. So just to run through them again, BESM Extras, $35. Dramatis Personae, $35. 2D Animini's, $35. Dice Tower, $35. See a bit of a trend here. And then it's broken up with the Adventures is $15, and the Tokyo Sidekicks is $10. And so all of those put together, $160 is the package for all the new products. But there's a lot of variations from there, and of course you can customize everything with an add-on. And every one of the earlier 4th edition BESM products is part of the Kickstarter as an add-on as well. So you can get a deluxe edition, or a core book, or Naked, or the GM screen, the character folio. We're including it all in the Kickstarter for people that want it as either as part of a larger pledge package or as add-ons. So thanks for that question. All right, just looking through. Okay, so Roland, you asked about how big a book do you expect the multiverse to be? So I really like the 144 hardcover pages of a splat book. There's a couple of reasons 144 as it works as the hardcover, because it isn't so large that the price is going to have to be much higher. So $35 as a price point is much more attainable, and it also it's not so bloated in content. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing isn't a lot of story driven type stuff. So some games either heavy story or heavy game mechanics, for example. So Dungeons and Dragons, lots of game mechanics, and game mechanics being like new races and new classes and whatnot. And then other games, maybe some of your World of Darkness type stuff, a lot of thematic heavy aspects that go into there. So it's not to say we couldn't do something bigger. If it made sense to have a bigger book, then we would certainly do so. But when I'm thinking of a good expansion for a 352 page core book, 144 is kind of a bit of a sweet spot, and I think you can do a lot in that. Particularly that it's not the old 6x9 digest from the second edition as a full page, and the font size is a reasonable size. We're fitting 900 ish words per page, so that's a good size book at 144, and it allows us to have some really nice art in there and have a lot of content. But I don't have we're typically not deriving the contents of books based on a size component. They fit what we're looking at, but if it makes sense for the multiverse to be smaller, or it makes sense of being much bigger, then we'll certainly do that. But I'm thinking probably 144. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, what more do you need for an initial survey of the world book that covers all the six prime worlds plus Earth or Omphalos, covers that as a base, and then individually we can go into an Aradia book or an Enid book or a Bazaroth book, which, like Bazaroth, for example, would be a horror anime setting book as well as a genre book. It's kind of a two-in-one. So it's not just about Bazaroth, the setting, but it's also horror genre. How do you run those? And what are the aspects of a horror genre game? Those ones might not be 144 because that's a lot for a single world. But at the same time, it might work out to be that way. That's going forward quite a bit, and we haven't quite gone there. But yeah, that's what we're going to be looking for that. All right, so it looks like again we caught up with all the questions. So thanks very much for that. Uh, let's see. Well, at this point, I don't know if there's that much left to talk about. Um, I think we covered everything but the Kickstarter that's going to be happening. Covered a little bit about what's going on with the future of the line. Um, Let me just run through quickly all the different ways that you should be getting involved, to make sure you're on top of stuff. My mailing list, certainly Dyskami has a great mailing list. It kind of summarizes thing, not high volume. Sign up to that just so you get those emails in your boxes whenever we send something out. The Kickstarter preview page is now live, and certainly go on to the again, everything is on the many of the social media platforms that we have to follow it. So just click a link, and whenever it goes live, you'll receive a notification on that. So we have the Dyskami Facebook page, corporate page. We have the BESM group. We have an Absolute Power group. That's kind of and then there is a BESM page as well. Although that was a legacy. That was something I created back 10 years ago, I guess, maybe. Yeah, over 10 years ago, for third edition. And so that's kind of the legacy page. I would say the BESM group, Absolute Power group, Dyskami corporate page, and then there's the Discord. There's our own forums that we have, which are not used much, but HR and thanks for and so a few other people use that. We have Twitter account at Dyskami. We have Instagram account at Dyskami. And so if you want to be in touch with any of us, we do a lot of cross posting. And so you might say, oh, there's a lot of duplication of information. I don't need to be everywhere. And we just don't want to miss anyone in particular. So we customize it a little bit. Instagram doesn't get quite as many posts as our Facebook, which is we get a lot more interactions on that. So that's where our primary focus on. A lot of informal discussion will happen on the TriStat fan pages, which is not a corporate Discord page. It is run by some really awesome dedicated fans that keep that going, and a lot of really great community that happens there. So certainly check that out. And info@dyskami.ca. If you have any questions, drop us a line. Of course, we're decently responding back. You can reach out through the socials, of course, as well, but certainly reach out to that there. I do see. So the rat hole, you asked about consider multiple writers for the multiverse. Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly a consideration. We need to find someone to kind of direct it, and we're in touch with a couple of people. I mean, while we don't have anything definitive to announce at this point, we're always working with different people, but a lot of the things are up in the air in terms of what's going on with COVID and people's jobs and time and dedication. And honestly, there's days where I sit in front of the computer and I'm like, I don't feel like doing anything. I miss my life the way it used to be, right? Like everyone does. And sometimes like, no, I just don't feel like working on stuff. So yeah, the multiverse might have multiple authors. It might have one author. We're not really sure how that's going to take form, but we're exploring a couple options like that. We want to make sure we get it done right the first time before we go forward with that one. So yeah, at this point, I think it's been an hour 10 or so, and then there is that first little bit of a hiccup, and I do apologize again for messing up that first Kickstarter or that first Facebook Live. So I think we'll wrap it up now, and keep an eye on all the socials. Keep an eye on the Kickstarter. Drop in, even if you don't pledge. Take a look at what we're doing. I think you'll be pretty excited about what we have, and follow along. I did forget to mention we have a YouTube page, of course. We post up videos once in a while. It's not every day, but sometimes I just have a topic I want to talk about, and I went through a 6-part video series about how to create a character. So if there's something you'd like to see, just drop us a line, and we'll take a look at that going forward. So thank you everyone very much for tuning in. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now. It's taking people's attention in numerous different ways, but thanks for giving me something to talk about for the past hour and a bit. And I'll look forward to seeing you all again, either online or in another video another time. So thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.